About the three-strike law that should prohibit certain violations. The three-strike law is highly intense towards traffic violations and other small violations. These violations should not have a jail time for small incidents that happen. There are many pros and cons that are intrigued within this law. Though a select few states have this law, still many prisons are overpopulated along with society being high in debt. Today, more than half of inmates sentenced under the law are serving sentences for nonviolent crimes. Sentencing for nonviolent crimes is highly drastic with the consequences that are given. The criminal justice system is pursuing a government with high fees along with overpopulated jail cells. For the criminal justice system to develop a comeback within society, they should lower the charges of amounts of nonviolent crimes today. Charges are becoming overboard with the Criminal Act, and criminals that are to bail out become in debt a lot more, which causes a lack of payment on other ends of their lifestyle. If you or a family member were to get pulled over for speeding 3 times and ended up in jail, compared to a sex offender that was charged 3 times, is not acceptable due to the schooling or suspension of the license that can be given out. Other factors that can be played out according to the justice system for minor crimes. The three-strike law is highly intense towards traffic violations and other small violations. These violations would not have a jail time for small incidents that happen. The purpose of the society is to come as one and be mature about our actions and have a civil lifestyle. Though us humans act up and get ourselves into trouble, we all know there will be consequences we face. As growing into an adulthood, our mind frames tend to get brighter and capture more understanding. We know without laws, our society would be a mess. Laws have a predicament towards our actions that will cause consequences that against us to have an understanding behind the laws. Felonies have a strict consequence when coming down to the obedience of their third chance. The criminal justice system seems to have a positive remark within more intense crimes. Facing life in prison is a huge stance in knowing there is no turning back to change our decisions. Having a secure and well-tolerated system against these criminals is remarkably different than 20 years ago. Most jobs in sports are having a benefit with drug testing others and proclaiming a criminal background. Without these strong stances, our society would not be the way it is, with having safe families and proclaiming justice. If 34 million serious crimes are committed each year in the U.S., and only 3 million result in arrests, something must be done to prevent these crimes from happening in the first place. With the benefit of the doubt, why keep charging nonviolent crimes to jail and pay high fines when some people can't even pay it off? With so many people getting locked up for non-severe crimes is turning our criminal justice system into an overpopulated prison enclosure. Nonviolent crimes should not have the three-strike law against them. The three-strike law is highly intense towards traffic violations and other small violations. These violations should not have a jail time for incidents. The purpose of this society is to come as one and be mature about our actions. Though us humans act up and get ourselves into trouble, we all know there's tough scenarios that people would face. The sentencing scheme was intended to keep murderers, rapists, and child molesters behind bars where they belong. Project clients have been given life sentences for offenses, proclaiming stealing $1 to lose change for a parked car, processing less than a gram of narcotics, and attempting to break into a soup kitchen. The three-strike law is also applied disproportionately against mentally ill and physically disabled defendants. In 2012, voters overwhelmingly enacted the Three-Strike Reform Act to address the harshest and intended consequences of the sentencing law. Prop 36 eliminated life sentencing for non-serious, non-violent crimes and established a procedure for inmates sentenced to life in prison for minor third-strike crimes to petition in court for a reduced sentence. In order to win a reduced sentence, the court must find the prisoner no longer poses an unreasonable threat to public society. If criminals don't have any felonies in their past, then there should be no consequences that should attain jail time. The purpose of the society is to come as one and be mature about our actions. With the development of prisons and charges, it comes down to a high percentage of crimes in one area. Overcharging criminals have an effect on the prisons and inmates all over. Researchers have determined that some of the causes of prison overcrowding are harsher penalties for criminal activities, changes to laws that make new actions illegal, high recidivism rates are needed, improvements to the penal system. A 2011 report examines the long-term effects of the prison overcrowding and offers suggestions to combat it. One of the primary suggestions is to reevaluate prison sentence terms for some crimes, drug-related offenses in particular. Tough on crime is labeled for the criminals that need to face the toughest consequences. Criminals that appeal in felony of higher violations should conceal of jail time. Overcrowding to provide guidance to policymakers and to address prison overcrowding and mitigate its harmful consequences should pertain to investigating non-custodial alternatives to detention, both pre-trial and post-sentencing, diverting minor cases out of the criminal justice system altogether, investigating long-term strategies for crime prevention and reduction, reducing high rates for pre-trial detention by improving access to justice and making special or alternative arrangements for vulnerable groups such as children's mothers with dependent children and people with mental health issues. Three strikes law adds over $19 billion of the state's prison budget. Criminologists agree that life sentences for nonviolent repeat offenders do nothing to improve public safety. With all the crimes that are brought upon our lifestyle today, we don't realize the consequences others are getting charged for. Parents speeding home because their children are sick are not a relevant situation toward a criminal killing an enemy. What the consequences that are being given out is highly unacceptable when coming down to severe and small crimes.